Hello, welcome to Uncommon Leadership. I'm Michael Hunter with Uncommon Teens. Today, I'm talking with Tan Sum. Tan is an experienced leader and a founder of her local Agile community. From an early practitioner of extreme programming, developed into a thriving career helping teams find their best way to become the teams they want to be. Tan loves connecting with people and hearing their stories. Today, I'm delighted to be sharing her trademark humor and lightheartedness as she shares her stories with us. Welcome, Tan.
Thank you, Michael. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. As you reflect over your journey to seeing people as people, learning to leverage their unique gifts to best accomplish your goals, when did you first recognize that this approach might be valuable?
I had a lot of thought on that, and as I was thinking through, I'm like, man, when did I discover that? I think it happened way early in my career, back when I was just a software engineer. We were working on an XP team, and we just seemed to struggle. The struggle was like trying to translate like between business specifications, which at the time we were using stories and stuff like that, and just getting together and understanding it. And it didn't matter what project we did. There's always this constant struggle of like, the business wants this, the team is trying to build it this way. And just kind of like one day I sat there and I just look at everybody and goes, why don't y'all just get together and talk about this? Like
Mm-hmm.
literally there was communication going over email. I'm like, uh, we're not getting through much here. So I sent back an email like, okay, I'm stopping this. We're going to just pull everyone together and let's talk through this and try to understand what it is we're trying to get done here. And quite honestly, we as developers cannot help you as the business get to where you are, where you want to be, if we can't see clearly like what is the intent behind all of this, right? And through that is when I realized, okay, we're all trying to work towards the same things, but none of us is really good at using our communication skills. And from there, so I'm like, business, you're good at doing business. Developers, we are good at coding and building things. So let us do our jobs. Like, let us put in our creativity, whether it's through code, whether it's through automation, whether it's through coming up with like a different way around this. And we're going to deliver you like the true end result that you really need here. So that was probably year 3 of my career as a software engineer.
That's a lot earlier than I figured this out. You are ahead of the game there. Um, if that's how you got started, was there something that really stood out in your journey since that reinforced and propelled your faith in this is really the right way to go?
Yeah, so that's kind of where I guess the initial discovery happened. And throughout the years, like my career would change. And it grew out of being an individual contributor into more of like people management. And it was really the people management part of my career where the recognition in people and their talent and their skill set, but truly their creativities and just being a pure human being can change the world and can change the way we do things,
Mm.
right? It was during that stage of my life where I struggled the most. And I say struggle was because you grow up and you think about this, right? So whether it's going through the school system, whether it's going through your career path, whether you're working in the private sector and the government sector, there's always some sort of structure that's put in place. There's always some rule to play by. And what do these rules do, right? A lot of times we think of them like they're supposed to be guidelines that help you kind of stay safe, but they're never really truly taught that way. It's
Mhm.
always, well, if you don't do this, you're going to get in trouble, right? And then people started pivoting towards more of like the punishment route. So during my time as a people manager, like the struggle was like, well, I know that my people are the best people we've got. They come from a mixed background of technology, of domain knowledge, of people experiences. And then now we're up against like a system where it's like, okay, well, if we stray out of this, it just creates a lot of chaos for this other sector of the company, whether it's security or whatever. And then everybody starts raining down on us. And I said, no, I am not going to hire people in and tell them you can't do your job the best way that you can possible because, well, we got all these rules to play by. And it was at that moment is when I realized, if we just allow people the freedom and the creativity to operate however they need to in order to get the job done, we will arrive at a much, much better outcome. And outcome is so much more than just the end results. It's so much more than just the dollar amount, right? We're looking at, okay, what's the change we really want to see here? And yeah, that's a pivoting moment for me. And this kind of where it's like, hey, we can do this better.
That point of taking the reins and throwing out the rule book and doing things the way that makes sense, even if it's not the official or approved way, can be really scary and can bring a lot of pushback from other people, other parts of the company, even people on the team who are not used to this much agency.
Oh, yeah.
But what sort of struggles or experiences have you had as you've pivoted teams into working with their full abilities?
I think the largest struggle has always been more at the leadership level. Um, when when the leaders aren't aligned, and when I say aligned, it's beyond just strategies and roadmaps. It's also like the incentives, right? When the people at the top aren't seeing the same things as the people at the bottom. And I'm not saying the people at the bottom are like the lowest of the company. That's not the point here. But if you really think about it, the people who are actually focused on doing the work, they're the ones that are making things happen, right? So when you look at the entire vertical of the organization and they're not aligned, we have chaos. So what do we need to do to get back to it? You have to think through, the same set of steps that you typically play by. These rules and guidelines that are put in place for you to play by aren't always going to work out. So we have to come up with creative solutions. And the struggle is always getting people at the top to see the same things that you see, the people doing the work. So the visionaries and the individual contributors really have to work in sync and work together. So one of the situations I ran into was probably like my second job. This is when the people management aspect, and it was a mortgage company, right? And the struggle is like when I go into a meeting talking about like, okay, what's the next set of priorities? What is this product that we have? The set of features that we need to do, right? And you have to also talk about who is it for. And it became a battle because it was like loan officers or the processors or somebody else. And everybody was number one priority.
Of course.
Because, nobody's ever second to anything. And so what ends up happening? When people don't get what they want, you get into a situation where it becomes political. And I literally had like the C-suite going, well, the CEO said this, or CEO said that, or the owner said this. And I'm like, well, shoot, I don't know what this is going to land me. So I called the owner of the company. I said, we need to talk. Your executive team is saying X, Y, and Z are all number one priorities. I need to know in your mind what is number one priority because I've got a whole team to guide through, and I'm not going to set my people to work on the wrong thing if this is not even on your radar. And by golly, when I did that, it was the scariest thing ever. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to have a job today. And it's so funny. The end result of that was he actually ended up sending me a thank you note. And I'm pretty sure I still have that thank you note somewhere. I'll have to go through and dig through my boxes. And I remember to this date, and it read, thank you so much for giving me that phone call. It's very rare that someone will approach me and be open and honest on the state of things. But here's the top three priorities. And that's what I use to guide all my people.
Nice.
So that's why I say it's very important to, and I stole this phrase from my friend, aligning on incentives. And incentives need to be top, middle, bottom, everybody working towards the same path. And everyone has to see, you know, are the things they're doing, the values that are important to them, the purpose, everything, is that aligning with what the organization is saying and the strategies and everything behind it?
What other tools have you found that help you bring about that alignment?
Well, do we really want to get into all the facilitation stuff?
Sure.
Um, so don't ever call your CEO your the owner of a company unless you feel like you're ready to lose that job, right? Um, a lot of stuff, right? So I've done lots of facilitations. It is very important for people to have clear understanding of number one, what their vision is. And once they understand the vision, it's going towards, okay, what do I have in place that'll help me get there? And if what I don't have it in place, then what can I bring on board to get there? That's one way to do it. Look at the other way is like, okay, what are the skill sets that I have on deck? And this is the conversation, even as a coach today, that I have all day long with a lot of teams. So I coach in, and when I say coaching teams, I'm a consultant. So these teams will vary from client to client and vary from like, company to company. And the biggest thing is always like, can they see where the business is headed? And if they can't, we have to sit down and realign ourselves on there. It's like, okay, well, what does your overarching strategy looks like? Where does that add up to your business architecture? And these are all these things that people forget about is strategy is very important. Strategy is what helps you to organize your thought, organize the work, and align it with where you're the actual direction, which is to your end vision. And it is a result of that, which translates to the outcome, right? The outcome is always looking for change, right? And it's if you really think about outcome, it's behavioral change. And behavior is hard to change.
When you said that the outcome is always change, it pops into my head that the outcome of every business is ultimately change.
Mhm.
We think about these big companies like Microsoft and Google as not wanting their customers to ever change because they want their customers to always be buying. But they have to be changing their products or we will never upgrade.
Mhm.
They have to be changing their products or they won't be up with the times and they won't be relevant anymore. That is maybe the most succinct definition of what every business is trying to do that I think I've ever heard. Their outcome is change. And then the differentiator from company to company is what is the change that you care about versus this other company and the other one down the road.
I mean, you have to really think about what's the motivating factor, right? We talk about you should change the product, you can add more suites of product to it, or completely change direction of your business. The other thing that people forget about is like your user base could change too. Because and it changes from generation to generation. And you have to also look back at human behavior. What is their trend looking like? 20 years ago, this is how, end users interacted with the software, interacted with the application, interacted with the hardware. Modern days, uh, how many people actually sit down and still have like a clunky desktop?
Mhm.
Since everything is so unique and so small, like now we're entering into the land of like VR, AR, immersive experiences. So guess what? With these companies, like their user base could change too. It's going to be a lot of the people who are interested in cutting edge technologies, wanting to live in a very truly immersive world. And all around that is the way people interact, they also change, right? So, what does all of these bring about? It's emotions. People get excited when they see positivity coming out of all of these products. People get excited when a simple act triggers some sort of emotion for them. And that's what they buy. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I just went to the Louis Vuitton store today and um I took my children with me because it's close to Valentine's Day and we love spoiling our children. So that's the other part of me is like I'm a mother of two. I love my total kids. And I love it when my children sees whether it's an object, a product, or some sort of experience, and their eyes just kind of wide open and excitement, and you see the sparkles, right? And that is what I'm willing to pay for. Like, I want my children to be happy, and if that thing is going to give them happiness, by golly, it's coming home. It's the same with all these products.
Yeah. So oftentimes, as you said, there's a disconnect between what the business is trying to do, what the founders and executive suite is trying to do, maybe between themselves even. And then by the time it gets down to the engineers who are actually writing the code, actually figuring out how the features should look and what they should do, there can be a vast gulf in understanding between um, each of those levels. How do you gauge how dramatic that gulf is? And at what point does it become, how much of a gulf is like just fine, it's not a big deal? And how do you know when it moves past that point of, okay, now this disparity in understanding is too big to be viable and we have to do something to bring things back in alignment?
So let me understand the question. How big is the gulf typically is, the gap?
How do you understand how big the gulf is, and how do you identify when that gulf becomes too big to be workable?
A lot of it depends on what gets lost in translation, right? So even I mean, look at us, just a moment there. You're obviously asking me a clear question, and I'm like, okay, let me understand the question. Comes down to our understanding of what is being asked of us, right? Even though we all speak English, a lot of the time we don't. What we hear and what someone else says may not always match, right? So you have to be very intentional and understanding what is being asked of us. Very intentional in, are we hearing the same thing like our partners, our executives are saying here? And are we understanding that message? So to uncover that, you have to look at what's the original message and the details, if there are any. Like executives speak in very high level. Their details, it's all business lingo because they got to sell to investors a lot of time. We speak in very tangible things. When I say we, like developers, business analysts, people who are actually doing the work speak in very tangible things because the end result is what matters in that line of work. So in order to understand how much of a gap we have is to look at, okay, from the original context to the breaking it down and actually doing the work, how much do they match up? It's a matching game is what it comes down to. And now if once we understand that and kind of see that, then we can kind of see, okay, how close or how far off are we? But it all comes down, tying it all back, communication is key in everything. Um, Communication, partnership, the ability to learn, understand like what is being asked of us, understand that we have to go get the right information, and then piecing it all together and say, okay, this is the thing that we're going to do. It takes a lot more analysis, a lot more thought before you even can sit down and write that first line of code to say this is a thing. And then afterwards, you have to do verification, right? So in software, we call it um, testing and validation, whether it's through a suite of automated tests, whether it's like having an entire engineering, like quality engineering team to validate it, you have to validate. So that's like the first tier, right? And then you have to think about, okay, now once this thing makes it to market, we gotta sell it. We need to validate this with our customers. So if we're bringing those practices closer, and not every company does this, I hope they do, but if we're doing more like human-centered design, bring it all a lot of that validation up front, then we get closer to that message and can actually close that gap a bit more.
So if I might just say this in a different way, as engineers in agile worlds are typically used to doing demos and reviews every sprint. And what we want to do, that the best way to ensure that we're getting clear understanding of what needs to be done all the way up to the executive suite and out to our customers would be to include our CEO, key customers we don't have yet in our demos. And every sprint be showing, here's what we're doing. Does this match up with what you want us to be doing?
Hey, if you ever get to a point where you can get the executive layers to see demos every like sprint, that would be amazing. I know that's not realistic, but that doesn't mean it's not it's not possible, right? It is. Um, because here's the thing, it's like we always see executives at that layer where they're almost like untouchable, right? But the reality is they love seeing things in action. They love the excitement when seeing people come together and actually produce and deliver, right? And they love it even more if you can get it ahead of time. So, depending on the size of your organization, whether you're a small startup or whether you're some like very big company up there, um, yeah. And also the size of your sprint. Like, there's absolutely no reason why the CEO can't see it. Or like have somebody take it to him, right? And that's why you have a lot of product managers, program managers that kind of represent all of that. Um, I am not one that believes in like all of these traditional things that I gotta play by the rules and I can't have access to anybody. If I know who you are and by having your attention is going to expedite things and get and help people get there faster, we're gonna talk.
It seems probably a pretty safe experiment in most cultures, company cultures. Just shoot off an email to CEO saying, here's an awesome new thing that I think you might be interested in. Just thought you'd like to know. If
Why
their
not?
secretary filters it out, no big deal. If they look at it, say, I don't care, no big deal. In the best case, they look at it and, like happened with you, send you a thank you. That was really cool. I didn't know we were doing this. Thank you so much.
Well, it comes down to how do we look at leadership, right? Because we always talk about servant leader and all this other stuff, but how many people actually live and breathe it? So my thought around all this is, and I know this is some politics coming into play, is I remember having some sort of conversation with a friend of mine who at one point in time was running for school board. He didn't win though. That was sad. But we got into a conversation where it's like, you really think about it. The president of the United States is probably the servant of America that is in the highest office, right? Because the people has to vote for him. So in theory, we don't work for the president. The person works for the people, right?
Mhm.
So let's pivot that and look at the CEO. I mean, obviously, we as employees don't really get to like vote for the CEO or whatever, but he gets hired in his job or her job um, is really to spearhead the company, make sure that every single company is positioned well in such a way that it's profitable and it's taking care of its people. It's the taking care of its people part that I feel is the most important. Profit is necessary to keep the company going, but if you don't take care of people, we understand where it's going. It's going to tank eventually. So that means that at the highest level, the CEO should also be serving his or her people, right, from all tiers, not the other way around. So if there's new ideas coming up, whether it's an innovative idea or not, like why not hear about it and see where this can take us, right? In my mind, no idea is too small to be thought about. No idea is too small to even be shown. The only idea that's too small is ones that really people don't talk about.
Mhm. How do you help executives and anyone really realize that taking care of their people really is their primary task?
You have to show value because everybody speaks in term of value, right? So, and nowadays there's all these like little add-ons to meetings where they're like, this is how much the meeting is costing based on the number of hours, dollars per hour you pay each people. So in order to show them that like people is their primary focus here is you also have to show that, okay, here's the value that everybody brings to the table. Doesn't matter if it's your secretary, doesn't matter if it's the janitor, assuming people still have office buildings they go to. And if you don't, if you work from home, it's the lady who comes and clean your house, right? Um, and by having, because everything's an ecosystem, by having all these people within your company, within your organization, here's every single step that they add to get you to where you are, to get the company to where it's going to make more money, right? So if I would say if you are in a company where they don't see value in the people, time to go, buddy. You're not going to last long. Well, that company's not going to last long in my mind.
Absolutely.
But yeah, like tie back the value proposition to every individual and you have to understand like everybody has to have a seat at the table somehow, right? Whether it directly or indirectly. Because if you don't, the voices that represent you or your own voices won't be heard and it's not going to be bubble up. Because these executives are such a high level that their focus is not necessarily on every single individual, but they're relying on their own first team, their own leaders to make sure they bring the challenges to them to make sure that every single person within an organization is valued and taken care of, right?
Yeah. And so then one way to measure the gap between my understanding and the executive's understanding would be to understand the value that I'm adding, understand the value that my team is adding, and mapping out how that aligns with the vision we are hearing from the executives.
Mhm. But the thing is, like, you have to also ask yourself, like, are these executives sharing these visions well? I have been in town halls and all hands meetings where, like, the direction sounds so amazing, but when it comes to execution, it's like, okay, you guys aren't heading towards the right direction. I've sat at the table with these executives and say, okay, here's what your people is hearing in terms of a message. We need to really come correct course and come back and be like, is this message aligned with where you're going? Because if not, you really need to sit down and work through that. There's a lot of time spent in crafting these messages and these strategies before it even gets shared out to people.
Yes. And the people crafting them often don't realize that the words they're meaning to say are not the words that are coming across and are not the words that are being heard by the people who are meant to hear them. And so having someone like you did at the mortgage company pass the message back of this is what we heard. Is this what you meant us to hear? Can be immeasurably valuable.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and it's very rare that someone like a team lead back then, because that was all I was, is able to just like call the owner of the company and be like, "Hey, we gotta talk." Um, Also at the time, it was a much smaller company, right? So about, gosh, I think it was like employee number 500 or something at the time. They are way, way past that now. So I'm pretty sure if I were to go back and put myself in that position again, like now in that same company, I'd probably have to go through some management before I'd even make
Mhm.
it to the CEO. But in my mind, I still think the reality is when you are an executive and you lose touch with people, no matter where they are in your organization, then you have lost touch with your own reality and your ability to serve. Um, and serving is my ministry. I'm hoping it's everybody ministries too, right? You got to serve the people within your organization. You got to serve the people outside your organization. But at the end of the day, your job at that level is to serve.
Mhm. And however far up the organization we do have access to, even if it's just our immediate manager, we can always say, this is what I understand from what I just heard. Is this is um, is this what I was meant to take from that?
Yeah, having an open dialogue is very, very important. And I hope that everybody who's a people manager, if you call yourself a leader, will continue to have open dialogue with like your directs, your peers, and then those above you, because your directs are looking to you to help carry their voice, right? Whether it's a concern, whether it's positivity, whether it's an innovative thought, we need to bubble that up so that people responsible for the health of the people within the organization understands and aware and this, hey, we're headed towards the right direction. We're going to be an innovative company, or hey, we've got concerns here because here's the employee voice surveys and here's how they're coming in, and yeah, we're not looking so good right now, so we better do something about that, right? And when I say they also need to represent the voice of their peers is when you become a people manager, hopefully you're not on an island. If you're on an island, run. You have to be able to leverage and work with your peers to build an even stronger leadership um, tier, right? Organization, however you want to, in order to protect and guide um, all of your directs, but then also become a stronger voice to push up, right? So when you're in the middle, not only do you have to manage down, you also have to manage up. And when I say managing up, I'm not necessarily saying like managing the people, but the expectations, right? Because everyone's looking to you and hoping that um, their concerns, your their interest in everything is something that you're caring and thinking about. It is your job as people manager to constantly always putting your people at the forefront. And then the other thing to think about is like when you're a people manager, how you behave, how you speak, all these patterns become an impact, right? People will be constantly looking and seeing, are you carrying yourself in such a way where you're representing the right type and style of leadership that your people are going to be proud of, right? Your peers are looking to you going, is this the type of behavior that I want to actually emulate? And then the people above you are looking, going, is this the right person to have in this position to continue driving things forward? And I think impact is something that people don't often look at, and it's very, very important. And impact comes down to like emotional impact, decisional impact, positional impact, you name it. But the most important one is you gotta be able to take care of the emotions. Because like it or not, when it comes down to it, people don't will not listen to facts when emotions are already the thing that they're focused on.
Yes. And it's the thing that really strikes me as illogical that emotions are what drive all the consumers who are buying whatever we're producing, whether that's a consumer or another business. And yet, so many businesses expect us to, as we take off our coat and hang that up, we also take off our emotions and hang those up and do our work with just pure logic, which of course we can't do.
Well, if we were robots, sure, we're not robots. We're
We're
human.
not robots.
We're multifaceted, and that's the thing. So what the exciting thing I love was when you did that interview with Esther Derby, and she talked about like histories and how that we can see it play a role in how organizations behave. People are the same way. Every single one of us, like myself included, carries with us a slew of history that shapes the way we think, that shapes the way we act, that shapes the way we speak, and also shapes the decisions we make, right? For example, I am a minority that based in like culturally as a female in the tech industry, as a refugee, that's my background. Um, and it comes with a lot of history, like the refugee side of me, like my family, we survived a genocide coming to America. So there's a whole huge impact around all of that, understanding, hey, here's the things we got to watch out for because when we work and interact with other people who have similar backgrounds, this is probably what they're feeling, and that history is going to carry with them. So any sort of unsafe environment or response is going to trigger something, right? And then the other part of me that probably a lot of people don't see and don't hear because I don't represent like what they understand anymore is, hey, I grew up in poverty. So for people who like have lived through all of that, living paycheck to paycheck, section housing, all those things, that itself carries its own set of historical background, right? Because think about the steps they had to take and the struggles and challenges from emotional impact, from a like psychological, physical safety, all of these things, financial safety that they had to overcome to get to where they are today. And so when it comes to decision making, they're probably going to make decisions that's going to protect them financially.
Mhm.
And then the other side of me, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, um, the colonial days, like my parents, they're Southeast Asians, and at some point in time, France conquered Southeast Asia. So guess what? All these rules and everything comes into play. So I'm saying everybody has history that comes with them, and it is that history that's going to create patterns in their lives and help drive to a lot of decisions making that they do. And the compassion comes from that too, right? And then that's where you have to start thinking about like empathy versus sympathy, all these things. And everybody's unique in their own history. You're not going to see one person that's exactly the same as another one because everybody's experience is going to shape that up. So,
Yes. And the more we understand how our histories are affecting the way that we are today, and the more we can be aware and ask for help understanding how our colleagues' histories are impacting the way that they are and what their experiences, the more we can understand how those experiences and histories are clashing and where they're collaborating. And that the more we can pull together the best of all those things to move us forward and mute where those are in conflict.
I'd like to say find the strength and the weakness.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be times where these histories will make you weak, but it is those challenges that everybody overcame that makes them strong, right? And if you can find the strength and the weakness across every single person, whether it's a team, whether it's somebody you work with, you're going to find a bond, a true bond experience. So, a prime example, my son had his string concert yesterday, Saturday, right? And I happened to be there sitting right next to this young lady. I call her young lady, but we're probably the same age. She's got 4 kids, I've got 2, but our sons are the same age and they're in the same string concert together. 2 completely different schools. We've never met each other before, and I was looking for a place to sit, and she's like, "Oh, these aren't reserved. You can come and sit, and it's okay." So I sat down next to her, and the next thing I know, we just started with a hey, hi, hello, and by the end of the concert, I had walked away with her phone number, her name, a lot of information around her family, and we've got a play date for our 2 sons coming up.
Nice.
And it's a shared connection, like, she's sharing with me the emotional trauma she went through, like, you know, trying to start a family with her husband, um, and we just connected through that. So, even though people may recognize some things as weakness, there is strength in it. You just have to find it, and
Absolutely.
we just connected on that topic.
Every weakness has a strength at its core.
Mhm.
Yeah. This has been a fabulous conversation today. What else should I ask you?
When are we doing lunch? Food's important.
Let's do that after we stop recording. What do you want to leave our listeners with today, Ton?
Oh my, I really, really enjoyed this. At the end of the day, really, like, leadership isn't hard. What's hard is just everything else that goes into it, right? So, if you see yourself as leader, the most important thing you have to recognize is you are a servant first and then leader next. And once you understand that, and everybody can lead with grace.
Yes. I think you just gave me the title for this episode.
Leading with
Leadership
grace?
isn't hard.
No, it's not.
You have, I think, the most unique gift I've ever seen for our audience. What's your offer for them?
Well, I think I stuck it in the form where it's like, if they want to reach out to me, like send me an email, I'll send them my favorite books. I love to read and I love to read on almost every subject. So, yeah, send me an email and I'll send you my book.
And we'll have those. Well, that goes right into the last piece, which is what's the best way for people to connect with you?
I think email is the best way. The other way is through LinkedIn. I get LinkedIn messages, so I'll try my best to not filter people out. Um, my phone number is the hardest to reach because if I don't know who you are, I'll be like, I'm not answering this. But yeah,
I'm the same way. And I'll
email and
have the
LinkedIn. Don't do Facebook.
yeah, okay. I'll have those links in the show notes. Thank you so much, Ton. any last words today?
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm excited. It's a beautiful Sunday evening, so if you're in the Midwest and the Columbia or St. Louis area, go out and play. We need that sunshine.
Absolutely. And audience, thank you so much for being with us today. And absolutely follow up with her offer for send her an email and discover what she sent you.
Exciting.
Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Uncommon Leadership today. If you found these stories interesting, inspiring, and illuminating, sign up for my newsletter. Hop over to uncommonteams.com and use the form at the top of every page. You'll be the first to know about every new episode of Uncommon Leadership. You'll also discover how you can build uncommon teams. If you'd like to chat about doing that yourself, email me, michael@uncommonteams.com, or use the contact form on my website. Thanks so much.